The topic for discussion, as you can see on the screen, is Swami Vivekananda's thoughts on education. Part 2. In the first part of this program, we have established how two sayings of Swami Vivekananda are relevant in the arena of education. That is, education is the manifestation of perfection already in man, and that all knowledge is inherent. It comes from inside, nothing comes from outside. And we shall be carrying on in the same spirit. We shall be talking about a few more sayings of Swami Vivekananda on education, and we will try to relate that how relevant they are in real life situations. The next saying about which I will invite your attention is what you can see on the screen. Education is not the amount of information that is put into your brain and runs right there undigested all your life. We must have life building, man making, character making assimilation of ideas. So, it is very much relevant in today's world. Well, for the sake of securing good marks at the examination, well, the students resort to what we call rote learning. They remember that till the completion of examination and may not be applying that in their real life by way of what they have learned. Now, in this connection, let us go back to the UNESCO Commission about which I had made a reference towards the beginning of the lecture. Now, it was said that let there be a paradigm shift from teaching to learning. See, more emphasis is being given to learning than to teaching. And what is learning? The treasure within, which is already there, inherent in man. Now, I will relate that with the saying of Swami Vivekananda. The main feature of this UNESCO Commission was that it was supposed to have given a direction to the nature of education in the entire globe for the 21st century. And it came out with a very significant recommendation that let there be 4 pillars of learning: learning to know, learning to be, learning to do, and learning to live together. Well, we learn to know. We learn to know, but we tend to know only from the books, from other resources. Of course, students these days are getting sensitized to the open education resources and several such other resources available on the net. That is fine. But there is another way of learning, that is experiential learning, about which we will talk at a later stage. But let us look at learning from the holistic point of view. Now, if we look at the second pillar, learning to be, and in this regard, let me cite an example. I was attending a seminar on the topic education for all. Several erudite scholars had come to deliberate in that seminar, and in course of the seminar, tea was being served. And you will be surprised to know that a young boy whose age is hardly 6 was made to serve tea for the participants. So, we are attending a seminar where deliberations are being made on a topic education for all, and a young boy whose age is hardly 6 is made to serve tea for the participants. So, we have not learned to be. Ramakrishna Paramahansadev, the famous guru of Swami Vivekananda, used to say in Bangla, "Amra bhaber ghore churi kori," which essentially means that we perform theft in our realm of thought. So, the same thing was happening there. The organizing committee of the seminar was performing theft in their realm of thought. They have organized a seminar on education for all, but they are making a young boy whose age is hardly 6 serve tea for the participants. So, we have to do a lot to learn to be. Learning to do. Again, I will cite an example of myself going to an elementary school. Well, I had entered into one of the mathematics classes, say of class 3 or 4 standard, where the mathematics teacher was taking a lesson on measurement of length by metric system. I asked the teacher, what is the status of your students? he said very confidently that they are all prepared and you know that I am going to take a test tomorrow. So, what I am doing is only revision. I asked the students that do you know the relation between a meter and a kilometer? Well, all hands got raised up and everybody answered perfectly. 1000 meter is equal to 1 kilometer. Similarly, when they were asked about centimeter and meter, again they answered perfectly. 100 centimeter is equal to 1 meter. So then I asked them that how far is your home from the school, because the school was situated in the outskirts of a town and naturally I was interested that how they commute day in and day out. And in course of that I wanted to ask them how far is your home from the school. Now no hands are getting raised up for a distance which they trade day in and day out. Same is with how many centimeters is my pen. No hands are getting raised up. What is the length of the classroom? No hands are getting raised up. So then I asked them that do you know how much is a meter? Now somebody said 1 meter is this much, somebody said 1 meter is that much, somebody said 1 meter is this much. So then I asked the teacher, they do not know how much is a meter, and his reply was that he has not been provided with a meter scale. He could have shown this much is a meter. Even whatever I am showing with my body language, maybe 1 or 2 centimeters more or 1 or 2 centimeters less. How does it matter? So we have to do a lot to learn to do. So we have not assimilated the ideas, we have only rote learned, and there Swami Vivekananda's saying becomes so relevant, and it definitely tells us to be careful about rote learning, about the dangers of rote learning. And the fourth pillar is learning to live together, and nothing can be more crucial in the context of our country than this fourth pillar of learning, learning to live together. Again, I will cite an example. I was travelling along the Delhi-Jaipur expressway in a bus, and at some stage there was a traffic jam, and the cause of traffic jam was detected to be some bullock carts entering the expressway, which should not have happened. There were some foreign travellers who were quite disturbed, and they were wondering that how can there be bullock carts on an expressway. I said that the answer lies in the spirit and tradition of Indian culture. That is the spirit of tolerance which is deeply impregnated there, and our expressways would be having Marutis and bullock carts. Again, well, that was a rather emotional statement, but I wanted to mention the point which I wanted to emphasize, that we know how to strike balance between these two extreme ends of inequity. And what we see in the education scenario, we have the IIMs, the IITs, research institute like Indian Institute of Science, Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, which give us international pride. But then there are elementary schools spread over the entire country where water will squeeze through the roof during monsoon. So we have to strike balance between these two extreme ends of inequity, and then and there Swami Vivekananda's saying becomes so relevant. Well, here it has been further elaborated by mentioning the present system of education is all wrong. The mind is crammed with facts. See the use of this particular word crammed. The mind is crammed with facts before it knows how to think. Before it knows how to think. The cramming of facts do not let us think. It has killed our thinking faculty. But see what the eminent scientists, eminent scholars would do. They would raise questions. We had seen towards the beginning of this lecture that Swami Vivekananda was never indifferent to the audience to which he was addressing. Now, we have several teachers, with due respect to them, who would snub a student when they raise question. But then, as we would see through these examples, that this eminent scientists, the scholars, they would always raise question. Professor Einstein used to question that why the magnetic needle will always point in the same direction. If I sit on a vehicle and go on increasing its speed, now what we see in the road, that I am travelling in a vehicle and another vehicle is travelling with the same speed by my side, then it appears to be at rest with myself. Now, if I go on increasing my speed till I acquire the speed of light, well, will light become standstill? Well, this is the sort of question which he used to ask, and on many occasions the teachers would get irritated. So much so that the principal of the second school which Einstein had attended, Luitpold Gymnasium, had to summon his father to tell that your son does not have a future. Think of the assessment made by the principal of the school, telling such thing about a person who came to be known as the person of the century. So, you have to question. C.V. Raman had questioned, why is the ocean blue? He could not accept the explanation given by Lord Rayleigh. Isidore Rabi, the famous nuclear physicist who got the Nobel Prize in the year 1944, he used to question, so much so that whenever he would return from the school, his mother will always ask, have you asked a good question today? Now, Swami Vivekananda, or you can say Rabindranath Tagore, Mahatma Gandhi, they are not men of science, but they had also questioned. Swami Vivekananda, during his quest for God, when he was going from one sage to another, well, everywhere he was raising a very direct question, have you seen God? And in all places he was getting the answer in negative. But when he gets the answer in affirmative from Ramakrishna Paramahansadev at Dakshineshwar, pat comes the next question, can you show me? Mahatma Gandhi had never performed experiment by picking up chemicals from a chemistry laboratory, but he picked up them from the humankind and performed his experiments with truth. Here truth does not merely means honesty, but here truth means plunging into the real life existence and picking up issues from there. Rabindranath Tagore, he was not a student of science. Now, if you go to Shantiniketan, well, annexed with the main Rabindra Bhavan is a library where all the books read by Rabindranath Tagore, I repeat, all the books read by Rabindranath Tagore are now being digitized. Now, I had the fortune of browsing through one such book written by an eminent science teacher of those days, Charuchandra Bhattacharya. There was a chapter on electromagnet, and Tagore has made comments with his own handwriting as a young boy. He writes, "Khub jotil bishoy na dekhle bojhar upay nei," which essentially means that it's a complicated matter. I don't believe it unless I see it. So, this is the reflection of scientific temper. Seeing is believing, and it is the art of questioning through which we have to clear our doubts. So, we have to develop our thinking faculty, and that should be the spirit of education. Now, Swamiji extends that. It was by way of questioning, particularly questioning his Guru, Ramakrishna Paramahansadev, that he has understood that there are as many paths as there are ways. And taking cue from that, he says that we must have the whole education of our country spiritual and secular. We must have the whole education of our country spiritual and secular in our own hands, and it must be on national lines through national methods as far as practical. So, he didn't go to spread Hinduism, but he wanted to establish Hinduism as a sort of a coordination between different religions, different religious thoughts. He said that a Christian did not be converted into Islam, nor an Islam has to be converted into a Christian, but a Christian has to be a better Christian. A person following Islam has to be a better follower of Islam. In our country, what we see that there are more Muslims than the entire Arab nations taken together. There are more Christians than the entire Italy and France taken together. So, we have really followed the spirit of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Well, this has been reflected vividly in Tagore's Bharat Tirtha, where India has been considered as a pilgrimage, where people from different sects, different countries have conglomerated. And that is also reflected in Firaq Gorakhpuri's Kafle Baste Gaye, Hindustan Banta Gaya. And this secular tradition also gets reflected in our sports. If we can play together, we can stay together. On your screen, you can see the stalwarts of our 2011 victory in the Cricket World Cup. Dhoni, the captain, is a Hindu. The main strike bowlers, Zahir Khan and Harbhajan Singh, are a Muslim and a Sikh, and all playing under a Christian coach, Gary Kirsten. So this is Swami Vivekananda's India, where we can play together and thereby we can stay together. He went to the extent of saying, educate our people so that they may be able to solve their own problems. Until that is done, all these ideal reforms will remain ideals only. Now, there is a reference to widow remarriage. Now, that was the time when Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar was the champion of this particular cause, and when the comments of Swami Vivekananda were sought, well, he just made a remark that I am not a widow, why I am being asked. The idea was that the women folk has to be educated to that extent that they are able to decide about their future, they are able to decide about their destiny, they become capable of taking decision themselves. So, this is an example of the way Swami Vivekananda thought about education. He will not give medicine just by looking at the symptoms. He would like to cure the disease altogether, and his prescription of medicine is dependent on that. Now, I come to the most significant aspect of Swami Vivekananda's concept of the first pillar of learning, learning to know. Well, there I had made a mention about experiential learning, learning through experience. He says, we may read books, hear lectures and talk miles, but experience is the one teacher, the one eye-opener. It is best as it is. We learn through smiles and tears we learn. Please read this line once again. We learn through smiles and tears we learn. Now, I am citing the example of, say, how water cycle is taught generally in the classroom. A diagram will be drawn by the teacher where it would be shown that vaporization is taking place from the water bodies like ponds, etc. There would be formation of clouds, and which gets transformed into rain, and this rain comes and again fills the pond. That is fine. But why should it be learnt in a single day? Why it cannot be learnt in an experiential manner? Can't the student be taken out in the scorching heat of summer to show that there is no water in the water bodies? That can happen in the month of May, June. Come July, August, you find that they get filled with water. So, where from this water has come? They can be asked to wander. And this is what is called experiential learning. You bring out the bottle from the refrigerator and ask the student to feel that how water is gathered outside, they will learn what is meant by condensation. And then again, coming back to this particular statement, we learn through smiles and tears we learn. I draw an analogy with what this person had said. You can see on the screen the famous film personality Charles Chaplin. He was a director, he was an actor, and all his films had stood the test of time. And the most important feature of all his films that, well, it would make you giggle with laughter throughout the film, but say for the last 5-10 minutes, it would bring tears in your eyes. It is joy mingled with tears. And every time I am giving this example, just try to recollect what Swamiji has said, learning through smiles and tears. Now, in his autobiography at page 40, I remember, he narrates an incident which has made a mark on his life. Well, there was a slaughterhouse near the very house which he stayed, and the shepherd boys will be taking sheep along the road. Now, one day it so happened that one of the sheep got tripped in his own leg, and so much so that the queue got very badly disturbed. and it was so disturbed that the shepherd boys were very much unable to bring that back in order, and it created a hilarious situation of laughter. So, what happened that one of the shepherd boys took out that erring sheep and started running with it separately, and that made the other flock come into order. But when Chaplain had seen that shepherd boy is taking that other sheep and running towards the slaughterhouse, well, the idea of tragedy struck him. He just went and hugged his mother, saying that they are going to kill it, they are going to kill it, and he started crying. And there he remarks that this particular situation has always stayed impregnated in my mind as the merger of situation of smiles and tears. So, it is through experience we learn through smiles and tears, as Swami Vivekananda has also mentioned that we learn through smiles and tears. So, I have related Swami Vivekananda's saying about education with what Charles Chaplin had thought about his films. Everything can be sacrificed for truth, but truth cannot be sacrificed for anything. This again can be a very, very significant statement for our attitude towards education. So, again I will narrate an incident. It happened in a higher secondary physics practical class. A student has come out with the result that the specific gravity of copper sulphate solution is 32.7. Now, specific gravity of copper sulphate solution is 1.09, something like that. So, naturally my fellow teacher, well, every practical class was assigned to 2 teachers and he was a very senior person. So, he just told him that you repeat the experiment and was not at all prepared to see what he has done. But the student was very much keen to know where he has gone wrong. So, I convinced my senior colleague and requested him to see what the student has done. And then I called the student, I asked him that, do you know what is the specific gravity of mercury? He said, I know, it is 13.6. So, if you take mercury in that particular bottle where you have taken copper sulphate solution, then your copper sulphate solution will be almost 2.5 times heavier than mercury. Do you think it is true? He said, no, I know, but please tell me where I have gone wrong. So, then we went through the calculations he has made, and this was the particular equation which has to be seen little bit carefully. SC, C stands for corrected. So, corrected specific gravity is equal to SO, that is S observed, into rho T, that is density of water at T degree centigrade. And here T degree was almost 30 degrees centigrade, the room temperature. Now, he had obtained his S observed was 1.09. Now, he was using a book where there was a printing mistake. It was written SC is equal to SO into rho T, but T has not appeared as a suffix, but just after rho. This was a proofreading error from the printer who has printed the book. So, what he did, 1.09 rho of water is very nearly equal to 1 in CGS system. So, that does not change the value of S observed much, but 1.09 got multiplied by 30 and the result was 32.7. Now, he was not a very good student, he did not apply his mind, to see that if temperature gets multiplied, then specific gravity ceases to remain a dimensionless quantity. So, he did not apply his mind, but you can't help but appreciate his honesty. You can't help appreciate his scientific integrity. So, if this student is groomed properly, he could have very well gone to a fellow student and could have just copied down the result and had produced the result, but he stuck to what he had seen. He could not disbelieve what he had seen, which most of us do or most of our students do. So, everything can be sacrificed for truth, but truth cannot be sacrificed for anything. And the most important arena of experiential learning through which the student have access is the laboratory. And here the students use a particular kind of exercise book which they call laboratory notebook. Now, by the name well, it is prudent that it should be used in the laboratory, but it is seldom done so. What the students do, they write on a rough notebook, take the rough notebook home and copy from the rough notebook to the so-called fair notebook in order to keep it tidy. Now, keeping tidy should not be the main objective. Again, the main objective should be scientific honesty. And about this particular issue of copying from a rough notebook to a fair notebook, well, these are the statements made by a famous teacher of physics practical, G.L. Square, S-Q-U-I-R-E. He says that copying is a wastage of time. There is every possibility of committing mistake while copying from one exercise book to another. And most crucially, there is an irresistible temptation of being selective. I have taken a data which is not in accordance with the existing results, the existing knowledge about that particular result. So, I will be very conveniently removing those results which are not falling on say a special kind of graph, which I know, say the graph of Ohm's law, I versus V characteristic. Some of them are not falling on the straight line. I have taken 10 observations, out of which 3 are not falling. I remove those 3. Why? Those 3 observations have also been taken by me. So, this is complete scientific dishonesty. I have seen something with my own eyes and I am disregarding that. So, we should not be selective, rather we should try to see where we have gone wrong. We might not have taken a particular important precaution, or there can be some factor, otherwise, well, we cannot develop the particular kind of experimental temper. Experimental temper is most crucially about the truth, about the integrity of performing experiment, which cannot be sacrificed. Everything else can be sacrificed for that. Finally, I would like to say that Swami Vivekananda was very much instrumental, very much emphatic about the spread of education, among the millions. Our open schooling system is doing a great job in this direction. And he says that I call him a traitor who, having been educated, nursed in the luxury with the herd's blood of downtrodden millions. So, whatever education we have achieved, well, this has come from the taxpayers' money, where even the poorest of poor has contributed. So, if we do not think of contributing back to them, giving back to them, then we are really a traitor according to Swami Vivekananda. And finally, I would like to present on your screen the spiritual guru of Swami Vivekananda and his holy wife Sharada Devi, without whom or without mention of whom this lecture would be incomplete. See, Ramakrishna Paramahansa Dev had said, Jato mat tato pad, there are as many paths as there are opinions, and this is the ultimate in the concept of secularism. And among several other sayings, this holy wife of Ramakrishna Paramahansa Dev, Sharada Devi, well, she was near illiterate, but see the phenomenal comment she has made. She has made many such comments. I have picked up one. If you want peace in your life, look into your own faults, not of others, and this will definitely give you the spirit of peacefulness and tranquility. So, if this can be practiced in our life, we can definitely attain peacefulness of mind and tranquility of ourself. And these were the personalities through whom Swami Vivekananda was groomed. So, I have been trying to establish that whatever he has said about education, I have presented them in bits and pieces, and I have related them with real life situation, and I have been able to establish that they were indeed relevant and they are relevant even today. Thank you.